Hey everyone, it's Billy Carson, aka Forbidden Knowledge. Welcome to the Forbidden Knowledge Podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Michael Schratt. Michael Schratt is a distinguished private pilot and renowned military aerospace historian. He has captivated audiences worldwide with his compelling lectures on the enigmatic world of mystery aircraft and the classified propulsion systems hidden within the shadowy depths of the military-industrial complex. As a featured speaker at the prestigious Oshkosh Air Venture events in 2006 and 2007, the world's largest air show, Michael's expertise and insights have earned him a reputation as a trusted voice in uncovering the secrets of advanced aerospace technology. Over the years, Michael has forged invaluable connections with individuals directly involved in classified black budget programs, including former U.S. Air Force pilots, retired Navy personnel, and aerospace engineers with top secret, sensitive compartmented information clearances. These firsthand accounts have fueled his mission to shed light on government mismanagement, fraud, and the misuse of resources. Driven by a commitment to transparency and accountability, Michael dedicates countless hours to meticulously researching aerospace technical documents, conducting in-depth interviews, and delving into the archives of leading universities. He passionately believes that it's every citizen's constitutional duty to question authority, demand transparency, and hold special access programs, often hidden from congressional oversight and public awareness, accountable to the people. Michael Schratt's unwavering dedication to uncovering the truth makes him a poignant figure in the fight for government accountability and disclosure of advanced aerospace technologies. Welcome to the show, Michael Schratt.
Cannot fit in the boxes. Stop it. Quitting was never an option. Exhausted. This passion is never exhausted. And you cannot stop it. Nah, you cannot stop it. Quitting was never an option. And you cannot stop it. Nah, you cannot stop it.
How you doing, man?
It's good to be with you, Billy. Good to be with you.
Yes, it's amazing. It's been a long time coming. I've been wanting to talk to you for so many years on a podcast. Okay. You know what happened? I think probably, man, it might have been now 7 or 8 years ago. I saw you at a government facility, or it looked like maybe private space facility. There was some type of conference or something going on. They were showing new technology, aerospace technology. And you had disclosed that in one of the hangars, there was something that was almost like out of this world. It looked like alien reproduction, vehicles, or something that was kind of re-engineered or redesigned from potentially, ET technology. And from the time I heard that come out of your mouth, man, I was hooked.
Yeah, well, it's a family here. It's a close-knit group of researchers, and it's good to be with everybody. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. For everyone who's just meeting you or seeing you for the first time, I've got about close to 10 million followers across all of my platforms. But just give them a little brief intro about how you got into aerospace technology in the first place.
Sure. So my name is Michael Schratt. I'm a military aerospace historian. The primary focus of my research deals with classified black budget aircraft within the military industrial complex. This all started when I was 5 years old. My dad used to take me to this place called Victory Air Museum, probably about an hour outside of downtown Chicago. And at this air museum, it was all outside. They had these old warbirds out in this field, and there was grass and weeds growing up through the wheel wells. The canopy was cracked. All the paint was chipped. The flight control surfaces on the tails and the vertical stabilizer looked like skeletons. And these old warbirds were just sitting out there, and it had this ghostly appeal. That was what really sparked my interest in aviation. And then living about 2.5 hours, by car to Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which is the largest air show in the world. I'd go there for 27 years straight. And, that just continued my aerospace research. Then I started researching these super secret classified aircraft. Things that are built by the defense contractors at Air Force Plant 42, engineering, pilots, engineers, people who work on the programs. I started interviewing those and then started piecing this whole story together and then commissioning full, detailed, refined drawings and using those as a guide or template to do a 3-color photorealistic rendering to preserve our national history. That's how all this got started.
Wow. Amazing. Wow. And so based on your research, do you think that aerospace contractors are involved in reverse engineering any UFO technology?
Well, that's kind of a $64 million question, right? How do we prove that? And the way that I think goes a long way to getting to some of the answers is what we'll be covering tonight. It's the preponderance of evidence that the firsthand military witnesses are telling us. People that held the bodies, people that loaded these craft onto 18-wheeler, tractor-trailer, lowboy trucks and shipped them to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. People that were pathologists, people who worked on X-ray technician reports. What they're telling us as a full body of witnesses, they're telling us that craft have been retrieved, they've reversed in the technology, they have built quote-unquote replicas based on the original, and that's what we want to talk about tonight. Beautiful, beautiful. So, hey, man, without further ado, let's get to it because, you have a lot to share. So let's share some of this compelling evidence that you have. Okay. Yeah. So the title of this lecture is called Retrievals of the Third Kind, Cosmic Crashes, Corpses, and Cover-Ups. And what this is, it is an homage to Leonard Stringfield. That's essentially what this is all about here. And I want to make sure that we're advancing okay. So we're advancing to the next slide, okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so UFO crash retrievals, the ultimate holy grail of UFO research. Now, why do we call it the ultimate holy grail of UFO research? If you think about it, it's actually easy because it is the UFO crash retrievals, which will be the vehicle that facilitates disclosure. This is what's going to do it because we have the bodies, we have the debris, and we have the craft all wrapped up into the UFO crash retrievals. And here's where we're standing right now in 2024. At this late part of the game here in 2024, it is really, Billy, the final curtain call on UFO crash retrievals. This is the final curtain call because we are timing out all the legacy witnesses. There are no longer any 509th Bomb Group witnesses anymore from Roswell Army Airfield. They're all gone. And you can see what the government is trying to do is they're trying to make anything prior to 2006 disappear. And then the recent UAP legislation, disclosure acts, those things have been axed by the defense contractors. So they're trying to kick the can down the road and they're trying to time out the legacy witnesses. But we won't do that because as a group and united coalition of researchers, it is, really it's the heart of a crusader. That's the strongest thing. I don't know if they counted on that, but we won't let them get away with it. That's the bottom line. Let's continue on here. A couple of quick announcements. The content of each case highlighted in this presentation has remained intact for the description of the original source. The identity of first-hand sources will be protected per Leonard Stringfield's original agreement with his military contacts. Number 3, the visual aids used in this presentation are computer-generated forensic composite illustrations and sketches, which originated from the specific details provided by Leonard's sources. Now, here is where he got all his information here. The caliber of witnesses, 3-star U.S. Air Force generals, U.S. Air Force fighter pilots, astronauts, commercial pilots, air traffic controllers, neurosurgeons, pathologists, theoretical physicists and mathematicians, U.S. Army officers, U.S. Navy officers, military police, high-level Pentagon officials, top military brass, scientists and engineers who worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and other government facilities. So, Billy, here you can see the level of credibility that these witnesses come with is absolutely staggering. Let's continue on. A couple of quick quotes. Number 1, UFO crash retrievals can't be real because if they were, I would have read about it in the local newspaper. That's number 1. Number 2, there are not now nor ever have been any extraterrestrial visitors or equipment on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, this is their official U.S. Air Force press release as of July 1980. So what we're going to do in this presentation is we are going to take Leonard Stringfield's combined united voice of firsthand military witnesses, and we're going to go up against the United States Air Force, and we're going to see who comes out on top here. Now, This is the man of the hour. This is UFO crash retrieval expert Leonard Stringfield. I want to introduce everyone to Leonard Stringfield. He was the gentleman who coined the term UFO crash retrieval. And over this 30-year time period, he collected dozens and dozens of these military witnesses. They had come to him because he promised to keep their names under wraps. And he did all the way till he passed away. And so they felt safe coming to Leonard with their stories. Now we're talking about people who loaded these craft onto tractor trailers and shipped them to Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, later to become Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. People who were autopsying these, medical doctors, pathologists. Those are the type of people that came to Leonard. So we want to talk a little bit about his bio here. Leonard Stringfield was born 1920. He grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. By the time he graduated from high school in 1939, he had already memorized the entire dictionary, believe it or not. This is the kind of guy that you want to have compiling all these accounts. I mean, he was such a genius that they actually gave him a nickname. They called him Webster. Well, that's how smart this guy was. Okay. He joined the military as soon as he heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. After the war, he was employed by a chemical company in Ohio and retired after 30 years. Leonard served as director of the world's largest UFO research group in the mid-1950s, Civilian Research Interplanetary Flying Objects, CRIFO. He received 8,000 letters in its first 2 weeks of existence. I thought that was interesting. Leonard wrote 2 books, Inside Saucer Post 3-0, 1957, Situation Red, The UFO Siege, 1977. Now, Billy, the next bullet item is the one that we want to drill down on here. His lecture on UFO crash retrievals at the 1978 MUFON Symposium in Dayton, Ohio, caused an international sensation. Now, why is that? Okay, here's the 2 reasons why. Number 1, the whole concept of UFO crash retrievals was just barely coming onto the radar screen back at that time. Roswell was just getting traction. And then number 2 is when Leonard delivered his paper, Retrievals of the Third Kind, he highlighted 12 of his firsthand military witnesses. But the agreement was that he could preserve an important part of our national history, but the names had to be kept under wraps. So there was some pushback here because there was no way to independently verify what Leonard was reporting here. So there absolutely was some pushback at the 1978 MUFON Symposium. Leonard passed away December 18th, 1994. Let's continue on. So this is the question we want to ask here. What was the one event that sparked Leonard's interest in UFOs, which ultimately changed the course of his entire life? What was the one event? Well, on August 30th, 1945, Leonard had a Foo Fighter sighting from inside a twin-engine C-47 while traveling from Okinawa to Iwo Jima. So it's 1945. They're going to Iwo Jima. They see 3 Foo Fighters off the wing. One of the engines on the twin-engine C-47 conked out, and they thought they were going to have to ditch in the Pacific. Now, when this thing peeled away, engine came back on, they landed safely. But it made an impression in his mind forever. That was the instigation and originating point for all of this here. So we can back that up by this newspaper clipping. Newcastle Sun, January 3rd, 1945. Foo Fighters are latest. Washington, Tuesday. Pilots flying over Germany at night report the strange balls of fire are following them around on their missions. They have christened these strange phenomenon Foo Fighters, so we know that checks out. Cincinnati Enquirer, July 19th, 1993. Author continues quest for truth about UFOs. What I've collected has staggering implications for mankind. This would be the biggest thing since Christ, really. So that's a bold statement he's making here. It is a bold statement. However, if even one of these cases is authentic, yes, it would be the biggest thing. It's absolutely incredible. Let's continue on here. Now, at one time, there was a collection of 22 bank boxes of original drawings, illustrations, sketches, detailed drawings, testimony, phone numbers, addresses, dates of all of these firsthand military witnesses. This is the kind of evidence that should be brought into open congressional hearings in Washington, D.C. This is exactly what we're looking for. It is the Rosetta Stone of ufology. This is absolutely the material here. Okay, now, I want to highlight this book, UFO Crash Retrievals, The Complete Investigation Status Reports 1 through 7 by Leonard Stringfield. The reason why I want to highlight this is because everything that we're going to be talking about tonight comes through this book. So I want to reference this. I'm going to give everyone the page number, the case number, so that they can verify this on their own. Now, a couple of quick points. When you go through this publication, which is about 2.5 inches thick, it is not for the faint of heart. You really have to have an interest in this kind of subject. You need to be, someone who has a passion for this because it's very text intensive. There are no drawings, there are no sketches, there are no illustrations. And so I thought, someone needs to go through this book with a fine-tooth comb, pick out the mission critical cases, commit those to a refined drawing, use that as a guide or a template for the generation of a full color 3D rendering. And so that's been my crusade over the last 4 years to preserve an important part of our national history. Now, another publication that is recommended is Magic Eyes Only by Ryan Wood, Earth's Extraterrestrial Encounters with Extraterrestrial Technology. Now, he wrote this book about 20 years ago. He updated it with 104 crash retrieval cases. If we link that up with Leonard's 119 crash retrieval cases, now we've got a very good body of evidence to draw from here. Let's continue on. Before we start with our cases, I want to take the listeners here to Las Vegas really quick. So we're going to do a quick trip to Vegas, and we're going to go to Caesar's Palace, and we're going to go to the roulette wheel. So we've got 119 crash retrieval cases within the Stringfield collection. We're going to go over to this roulette wheel that has 120 spaces, and we're going to put down 119 bets. And Billy, you can kind of see where it's going here.
Yeah.
The numbers are in our favor. We're going to win every time. We can't lose. We literally can almost not lose. The point being is we only need one of these cases to be authentic, and the whole concept of UFO crash retrieval non-existence completely falls apart. So it's really, the numbers are in our favor here. I want to give credit to Rudy Gardea, who's my sketch artist, for doing all these sketches and drawings here. So let's go ahead and begin. Now, this is UFO crash retrieval, 1942, at a Army base north of Georgia. Even Leonard didn't know where this was. And I want to give you the page number. This is page 319 in the book. This craft was 15 feet in diameter, 10 feet high, and there were 3 levels. Upper level had what looked like a display panel. There were buttons and switches on there. The mid deck had what looked like a wraparound window, and in back of that wraparound window, there were 3 bar stools. The lower section had an entryway hatch. Now, in the report, it said that when this craft came down and it hit the building of this North Georgia Army base, there was a hull breach on the side of the craft. So what you can see here on the left side of the drawing, Rudy's got that hull breach in there. That was talked about in the report. Now, there were 4 crew members taken alive, 5 feet tall, 90 pounds, large black eyes, and milky white skin. And then in the report, it stated that written along the bottom circumference of the craft itself, there was what looked like hieroglyphic type writing written along this bottom circumference. Now that tracks out with other crash retrieval cases that we've heard of, where there's this marking and insignia on the inside walls of the upper domes of these crafts. So let's blow this thing up and go to the next slide here. Gives you a little bit better idea what this writing might look like. So I'm thinking, Billy, that there has to be a transnational team of linguistic experts and engineers who are trying to decipher and decode what these things mean. They have to have a 3-ring binder that's really thick, trying to figure out exactly what these things actually mean. And this is my full color rendering, just to give an idea what this may have looked like back in 1942. We'll continue on here.
Amazing.
Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, 1946. What you're looking at here is Hangar Bay Complex number 4. The bay to the right is called E-Bay, Bay E. I believe it took place in this hangar. We have 2 witnesses for this particular case. It's page 242, 243 in the book. So if anyone wants to follow along, those are the page numbers. So we have 6-year-old Tex Martin, and we have his father, who was an avionics mechanic, working at Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. So we do not have to rely on the testimony of Tex Martin, who was only 6 years old at the time. His father was involved in this too. Now, the reason why we have Tex Martin here with his father is because he was getting very good grades. And his father invited him to work one day. Now, there was an adjoining cafeteria to what you see here in the main hangar complex. And I'm going to go to the next slide. There was a janitor in this cafeteria. And he saw this nice 6-year-old boy thinking, well, this seems like a nice young man. I'd like to buy him a soda pop. And so the 6-year-old boy asked his father if it would be okay. Father said, yes, it's okay. So this janitor gets this boy a soda pop, and he hands it to the 6-year-old boy. And I'm going to go to the next slide here. You see Rudy's roughed out drawing here. The second he hands this soda pop to this boy, inside the cafeteria walks this military personnel, and this Tex Martin witness, he's now looking inside this hangar. And what does he see? This is all in rough form here. He sees 2 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy trucks with unknown tarp debris. He also sees about an 18-foot diameter dish-shaped craft with 2 rings wrapped around the outer circumference and then tripod landing gear legs. And then he said that there were approximately 3 ET bodies laying on the hangar floor on stretchers. That's what he said he saw. So we're going to go to the next slide now, and I'm going to reverse the viewing angle. You can see 6-year-old Tex Martin. He's peering through the doorway in the background. And you can see the dish-shaped craft. We've got the tractor trailers. We've got all the monuments laid out here. We've got the bodies on the hangar floor. The father saw it as well. So we've got the avionics engineer. He saw it as well. And now, Billy, I want to take your audience to the refined drawing. And this is what we came up with the refined drawing. So in a nutshell, what we've got is the tractor trailers. We've got a Jeep in there. We've got military personnel. This disc was described as being off-white in color with 2 rings wrapped around the outer circumference. There was tripod landing gear and then the 3 ET bodies on the stretcher. So what we want to do now is we want to take this as a guide or template, use this as a template. We'll go to the full color rendering, and this is what we came up with to preserve an important part of our national history. So this is 1946, Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. Let's go to the next one.
Nice.
Same location, Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, later to become Wright-Patterson Air Force Base back in 1947. Our witness is a private who worked in records management. Now, the source is Space, the Final Frontier by Clark McClellan. This is page 59. So I'm going to divert one time and one time only from Letters publication because this is all part of the same storyline here. Let's go to the next slide. This is the cover of the book. So if anyone wants to follow along, this is where I got the information. Space, the Final Frontier by Clark McClellan. We'll go to the next slide. Now, within this publication is this sketch. This was a craft that came from Arkansas on a railroad flat car and was shipped all the way to Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. Now, this thing was described as being highly polished aluminum chrome exterior, 15 feet in diameter, 7 feet tall, no visible means of propulsion, no welds, no seams, no socket head cap screws, no hex head cap screws, no screws of any kind. There was what looked like rectangular windows wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft itself. Let's go to the next slide here. Here's my AutoCAD drawing that gives you an idea of what this thing actually looks like. Now, in the upper right cutaway drawing that I put together here, you see there was about a 3-foot diameter central column that ran from the bottom base of the craft up through the midpoint, terminating at the roof. Now, also want to bring everyone's attention to the front view here. In one window left of center, there is a red dot. That is the attempted point of entry where these white lab coat technicians were trying to use diamond tip drill bits to get into this thing, and they couldn't do it. They could not do it. I've got 2 other cases within the Stringfield collection where they're trying to desperately get into these things with diamond tip drill bits. Did not work. Let's go to the next slide. This was my very first pass kindergarten level full color illustration just to give an idea of what this might look like. And then I want to give credit to my good friend, Joseph Wraith, who did a much better job than me. And you can kind of see what he came up with here. He's even got the red dot on the window left of center. Let's continue on here. So here's Rudy's drawing. You've got the private and records management. He had a friend who was an MP. Now our private, who is our source, he was to deliver a letter to one of the high-level military brass inside the hangar facility at Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. And this guard said, you know what? I got something I want to show you. So he brings him back into the hangar, and this craft is just sitting on the hangar floor. He said that in the foreground off to the right, there was a tarp that was folded up. In the absolute nearest foreground, there was an open toolbox, and then off to the left, there was an electric drill with a diamond tip drill bit. And he was there for about 8 minutes, and then they left. So we want to take Rudy's drawing as a guide. We'll go to the full color rendering, and this is what we came up with to preserve our history back in 1946.
Wow.
Let's continue on here. Now, who would have a need to know about all this back in 1946, 1947 timeframe? So this is a letter from Nathan F. Twining to Air Force Brigadier General George Shulgin, September 23rd, 1947. Here's what he wrote. Quote, the phenomenon reported is something real and not visionary or fictitious. Later on in this document, it talks about the form, fit, and function of these vehicles and the flight characteristics of these vehicles. So according to Nathan Twining, this is not a joke. This is not visionary or fictitious. This is a real thing. This is absolutely happening. It's actually going on here. Now, next one. Papagos Indian Reservation, west of Globe, Arizona, January 1947. Our witness served in the U.S. Navy during World War II. The reference for this is page 93, case A10 in Letters publication. We're going to go to the next slide here. So we've got two military personnel. They're driving west of Globe, Arizona on this unimproved road, and they are stopped and challenged by military police with rifles telling them that you're not supposed to be out in this area at all. This is a highly restricted area. You're not supposed to be here. However, it was already too late because another 50 foot down this road, there was about a 30-foot diameter disc-shaped craft tipped up at about a 35-degree angle. It had a low-rise dome on top. It had two rings wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft itself. And then Billy said in the report, there was what looked like indented windows that were also wrapped around the outer circumference. So we wanted to take this drawing as a template or guide. I'm going to go to the next slide, and this is our full color rendering. And as we go through these slides, you can kind of see that the body count goes up, the craft count goes up, and it just keeps on going from there. Now, I have a side project that I like to do. Not only do I like to track down the craft and the bodies, I want to know what happened to the debris, what happened to the hardware. So in this report, within the Stringfield Dictation Notes Files collection, there is a source that talks about something that I thought was very interesting. This source mentions a company called Foot Brothers Gear and Machine Company. So I'm going to just hit everybody with this. According to Mr. Robert Helmold, Foot Brothers Gear and Machine Company of Chicago conducted metallurgical analysis on pieces from a flying saucer that crashed in Arizona back in 1947. So I thought, I want to know what this company does. I want to dig down. I want to see what these guys actually build here.
Yeah.
So here is Chicago Tribune, January 15th, 1955. It says, it makes gears as large as 21 feet in diameter and weighing 45,000 pounds, and others small enough to put on a watch chain. Its gears are found on airplanes of all types, including jets and helicopters. In a year, it will make thousands of different gears for use by industry. So if you think about what's going on here, we've got a source talking about a retrieval operation in Arizona, and they're using Foot Brothers Gear and Machine Company to analyze the debris. Okay, so if they actually did recover something and elements of the military saw what looked like an arc radius with teeth on it that reminded them of a gear, this is the company they would take it to. Absolutely. This company is checking all the boxes here. Hendricks Commercial Register, 1909. You see the photo here, the size of the gears that these guys work on. So it's checking the boxes. We'll do one more. The purchasing agent, May 1923. So absolutely, this is checking the boxes. You would want to send hardware, debris, anything that might look like a gear section. Absolutely, it would go to this place for analysis. Okay, White Sands Missile Range, July 4th, 1947. Our source is a technical sergeant, U.S. Army Air Force. The reference is page 196 in Leonard's book. Now, what you're looking at here is a slide showing you the yellow boundary of White Sands Missile Range. Where this took place was on the northern part of the range, and I'm going to go to the next slide. This actually took place at night. And what came down was about a 150-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. And when it came down, this thing was excruciatingly well lit. So this was a nighttime retrieval operation. They had light owls shining on this thing. They had spotlights. They had searchlights. They had people with Geiger counters walking around this craft. This is from the military witnesses of the Leonard Stringfield collection. They had people with still cameras shooting away, taking pictures. They had other people with motion picture film cameras documenting this whole process. Okay, we're going to go to the next slide. Let's see if we can make this thing come alive here. And now you see the spotlights, the searchlights on this thing. Very interesting. This thing was 150 feet in diameter. Now, what is the actionable item? What is the takeaway on this particular case? Here's the actionable item. Since still photography and motion picture film was recorded of this event, senators and congressmen with the appropriate security clearances should track down and utilize this evidence for future public hearings. That's what needs to happen. However, Billy, as you know, the problem we're running into here is a lot of these senators and congressmen within Washington, D.C., they don't have a high enough security clearance and they don't have a need to know. So we're running up to this brick wall every time. And we really got to push through this. And that's why it's incumbent upon us to track down these legacy witnesses here. Let's continue on. UFO crash retrieval, 1947. Scene of all places at a warehouse at Berkeley University. Albert Bruce Collins, deceased, is our witness. He was a metallurgical engineer. And for anyone who wants to follow along, it's page 197 in the book. So he was at the right place at the right time when this 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy comes backing in. I'm going to go to the next slide here. And here's our witness off to the left. What he describes is a 30-foot long egg-shaped craft, 15 feet high. He literally stated, Billy, that this looked like a cracked egg. Wow. There was a 3-foot diameter central core or yoke to this egg. On the forward portion, there was a composite panel. Wrapped around the outer circumference of this egg yolk was another composite panel. And then off to the lower right, he said that it looked like debris and shrapnel were sticking out like there was an internal implosion. This is the impression that he got. Now I'm going to go to the next slide here. This is our colorized version by Joel Christopher Payne. I want to give him credit. This just gives you an idea of what was going on here. So we have defense contractors, we have universities, we've got Berkeley being involved in this. We can see what's actually going on here. Let's continue on. Carrot Patch south of Salinas, California. This is July, August 1947. Seen by two 19-year-old workers in a nearby field. Again, this is from the Leonard Stringfield dictation notes. Now, when this thing came down, it was the foreman that saw it first. He alerted the two 19-year-old workers the next morning. And what they discovered was a 9-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. This is original drawing from the report. This is 4 feet tall. It had a flat top, so this was not a large craft. And then, this is the second time, it had a double row of indented windows wrapped around the outer circumference. Now, in this case, we have a map of where this thing came down. X marks the spot. So if we could go back in time with our time machine, we now know where this took place. So we could probably get plus or minus 200 feet where this thing actually came down. So we could be there and see all this going down. Now, here's my detailed AutoCAD drawing just to give dimensions here, 9 feet by 4 feet. This is not a large craft. We'll go to the next slide here. This was the very first pass SolidWorks full color rendering, just to indicate where these double row of windows were wrapped around the outer circumference. Here's Rudy's drawing. So the two 19-year-old workers, they walk up to this thing. One of them got up enough confidence and courage. He actually kicked the side of it with his boot. He made contact with this thing. Within a matter of 5 minutes, there was a contingent of military vehicles in a convoy that arrived at the scene. They ordered the two 19-year-old workers away, but they did see them manhandle this craft up onto the tractor trailer that was being towed by a covered 6x6 troop transport, and they shipped this thing out of here. So they got here fairly soon after the 19-year-old boys got there. So we want to take this as a guide, and we'll go to the full color rendering. And this is what we came up with, again, to preserve our history. And this is what's going on here. All we need is one of these cases to be authentic. Now, want to bring everyone's attention to Danny Sheehan. People that are involved in this research subject know of Danny. He obtained degrees from Harvard University, Harvard Law School. Large advocate for UFO disclosure and transparency. Let's go to the next slide here. Now, back in 1977, Danny was given a special security clearance to investigate classified files at the Library of Congress. We'll go to the next slide. These were the classified files specifically associated with Project Blue Book. These files are not to be confused with the unclassified Project Blue Book records, which have long since been declassified and sent to the National Archives in Washington, D.C. The photos were accessed by Danny Sheehan at the Madison Building basement during January of 1977 under the direction of the Congressional Science and Technology Committee and Marcia Smith at the Congressional Research Service. So here in this slide, I'm providing the background and reference of how Danny actually accessed this material. Let's continue on here. Where are the classified Project Blue Book files now? That's what we want to ask here. So where all this went down is the James Madison Memorial Building. This is where all this went down. Now, where is this building? Here is the top view looking down. So you see the United States Capitol. If we go off to the right, we've got the Library of Congress. And then if we drop down south, we've got the James Madison Memorial Building. That's where all this went down. So Danny shows up early 1977, and he goes to the James Madison Memorial Building. He's told to get in an elevator. He drops down to the basement. So I've got a photograph of the basement here. He walks down this long corridor, and then he's met with two security guards. They check his ID. It's Danny. They let him through. And then he's kind of ushered into this medium-sized room. And inside this room, he sees a couple of things. There's some microfilm readers there. There's some desks there. There's some chairs there. Off to the right, there's a rolling dolly with microfilm reels and then also a collection of documents. And so he thought, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I might only have an hour and a half in here. I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I don't have enough time to go through all of these files. So what he did, I'm going to go to the next slide. He started loading these microfilm reels into this reader. He did the pickup reel and starts going through the documents on this microfilm reader here. And what he said he saw is nothing short of incredible. He stated that he saw 3 photographs of a UFO crash retrieval operation. This was a winter time scene. He doesn't know where and he doesn't know the date. But what was depicted in this wintertime scene was a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. It was tipped up at a 30-degree angle. There was a mound of dirt where this thing came to a rest, built up on the right side of the craft. It had a low-rise dome on top. There was what looked like hieroglyphic writing or symbols wrapped around the outer circumference of this low-rise dome. There were 4 men in the scene. They were all wearing winter parkas with their hoods up, and they had that furry flange around their hoods. 3 of the men had period-correct still cameras. They were snapping photographs of this thing. 4th guy off to the left, he had a dual-reel, shoulder-mounted motion picture film camera. He was documenting all of this. And so Danny was smart. What he did is he took his legal pad that you see on the upper right here. He paged through all the blank pages and he got to that cardboard backing. He overlaid this cardboard backing onto the microfilm reel. And then when the image was projected down onto the cardboard backing, he had traced 1-to-1 per scale what these hieroglyphic-like letterings look like. And so what you see on the napkin here is drawn per memory of what he recalled seeing back in 1977. So when I met with Danny about 3.5 months ago with my good friend and artist, Rudy Gardea, we had him sit right next to us and we started vetting out all the details in real time. And so what I wanted to do is get this thing pinned down. What did this photograph actually look like? So that's the question we want to ask here. So here's our beginning process here. So what you see on the bottom is Danny's rough napkin drawing. On the top, you can see Rudy's rough sketch laying everything out. I'm going to go to the next slide. We'll rip through these relatively quickly. These are the details that we wanted to encapsulate. So the craft measured 30 feet in diameter, tipped up at a 30-degree angle. Craft had a dome on top and what appeared to be strange hieroglyphic markings on the lower surface. It left a trail on the ground and created a mound of dirt where it came to rest. The photo depicted 4 men wearing winter parkas with a furry fringe around their hoods. 3 men had still cameras, and a 4th man had a vintage shoulder-mounted dual-reel motion picture film camera. Now, I don't know the exact date of when this went down, but using period-correct motion picture camera as a guide, Billy, I believe this took place between 1948 and 1961.
Okay. Wow.
That's my best assessment here. Now, the photo absolutely depicted 4 men in winter parkas. And then Danny said that in the photograph, you could absolutely see that furry fringe on the hood. So that was something that he saw in the photo. We'll go to the next slide. 3 of these guys had period correct still cameras and they were snapping away. They were documenting this. One guy off to the left had this dual reel motion picture film camera without the tripod. It was just on his shoulder. So this is what I came up with here, just to give an idea about the timing and the dating. That's where I get that 48 to 61 time frame. Let's continue on here. Written along that bottom surface of the upper dome is what these symbols look like. And then I had an artist kind of clean these things up. These patterns went all around the lower circumference of the upper dome. We'll go to the next slide. Now, the refining process begins. We want to pin this thing down. We want to get the most detailed, refined drawing that we can possibly get here. So this was the very first pass rough sketch drawing with Danny sitting right next to us at the restaurant near downtown Los Angeles. And you can kind of see we've got the tip-up angle. We've got the mound there. We've got the monuments in place. We've got the men in place, all roughed out for him. We'll go to the next slide. This is almost a direct side view. We've got the men in place. We've got the mound built up. Let's go to the next slide. This is almost a direct side view. Now we've got our tip-up angle is just about correct. And we'll go to the next slide here. Here you see this is kind of a different perspective. And we started getting really close here. And what we want to do is we want to go to the next slide. And when we showed these drawings and rough sketches to Danny, he said, you know what, guys? You're not getting it. You're not getting it. And there was some frustration because we weren't getting what he was trying to convey to us. It finally dawned on me after about a week that what we needed to do is take this entire scene, rotate it about 120 degrees counterclockwise, change the entire viewing perspective, and then we will finally get to what Danny saw in that photograph. So this is the process where we're beginning to rotate counterclockwise. We've got a direct side view here. We'll go one more. And when we showed him this one, he said, yes, this is the correct orientation that I remember seeing in this photograph. You've got the men in place. You've got the mound there. However, your tip-up angle is too high. We need to come another 15 degrees down. And Billy, I want to show you our final rendering here. This is what we came up with. When we showed this to Danny, he said, this is about as close as we're going to get until we actually see the photograph. And This is checking all the boxes. We've got the winter scene. We've got the disc-shaped craft. We've got the low-rise dome. We've got the markings. We've got the 4 men in winter parkas. We've got the cameras, and we've got the dual reel shoulder-mounted motion picture film camera. Now, I didn't want to stop there. I wanted to see if I could push the envelope. Can we take this thing further? Can we go even further with it? Can we make a full color rendering to really get the details drawn out here? So what I did is I put forth a contest, and I had entries from all around the United States. I had entries from all around the world, people helping me entering this contest. I want to hit you with the contest results. Now, these are the parameters. I'm not going to go through all of these, but we'll rick through it. We wanted that period correctness, 48 to 62. It had to be a winter setting. We had to have a 30-foot disc. We needed that tip-up angle. We had to get those descriptions. We needed the 4 personnel all wearing the winter parkas. We needed the still cameras. We needed the dual reel motion picture film camera. All that criteria had to go into this. Now, there is a theoretical limit to what results you can achieve by typing prompts into an AI image generator. In other words, you still need the human touch. Billy, you're probably familiar with this. If you've got a case and you're on a Sunday afternoon and you're typing prompts into an AI image generator and you hit return, it's going to spit out a result that's not exactly what you're looking for.
Right.
That is just not there yet. It might be a year off, but it's just not there yet. So what you're left with, in point of fact, is a hybrid illustration. So you use AI for a background. You use 3D Studio Max or SolidWorks to model up the craft 1-to-1 per scale. And then you finish up with Photoshop, bringing in elements and bringing in equipment and material. That's where you're going to get your final results. So let's go to some of the results here. Illustration by Sean Lenahan. And it's a noble attempt. It's a noble attempt. You've got the 4 guys, you've got the parkas, we've got the craft, we've got the dome inscription. So noble attempt, good job. We've got the winter scene. Let me go to the next one here. A little bit different style. Again, we've got the parkas, the tip-up angle's good, the mound looks good, dome is good. So this is Ben Lewis. He did a good job. I felt, Billy, that Skylar Stallings, want to give him credit, he won the cash prize. So I awarded him the cash prize. I thought, yep, this is checking all the boxes. Perfectly done, perfectly executed. Winter scene, parkas, tip-up angle, dome. He's got the inscriptions. This is right on the money. However, I want to highlight that there was a late entry, which I thought was something that we should look at and consider and highlight. And Billy, I want to go to this one here, and this is just about as good as we're going to get. Wow. I think we're at the bleeding edge here. We're at the theoretical limit of what can be achieved without seeing the actual photograph. I mean, this is absolutely checking the boxes. Winter scene, 4 men, disc-shaped craft. This is right on target here. So let's continue on. Now, $64 million question. Where are the top secret files on UFO crash retrieval being stored? Now, this is from one of Leonard Stringfield's military witnesses. There was about a 2-page document highlighting what he said. Here's what he said. They are kept in 3 large computer banks spread throughout the country. Number 1, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Dayton, Ohio. That's no mystery to us. We already knew that. We already suspected that. Number 2, CIA headquarters, McLean, Virginia. And then NSA headquarters, Fort Meade, Maryland. And then he said cryptically, they will bend in any direction to keep them secret. So if we had senators and congressmen that had the correct security clearances and the need to know and had teeth behind what they were doing and could get into these facilities and get the massive computer bank data files, they would get this information according to this source. Let's go to the next one. Location of where ET craft are being stored. So we just talked about where the documents are. Let's talk about where the craft are. This is from the same witness. CIA headquarters, McLean, Virginia. MacDill Air Force Base, Tampa, Florida. Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, Goldsboro, North Carolina. These are just 3 of the locations. So what you can see, what they were doing here is as these crash retrieval cases came in, they were sort of originally funneled into Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, because they have the Foreign Technology Division there, so they can test the tensile strength of these materials. They have the aeromedical lab there, so they can look at tissue samples. Later on, it dawned on them that there's no way we're going to put all our eggs in one basket. We cannot operate on the premises of a single point failure. So what they did is they diversified their portfolio. They've now got things at Edwards North Base. They've got things at Homestead Air Force Base. They've got assets at Eglin Air Force Base, and they've diversified their portfolio. This is exactly what they've done. Let's continue on. C-119 flying boxcar, Sierra Madre Valley, Mexico, prior to 1951. I believe this is 1948 timeframe. Our source is an engineer. He worked in highway construction. This is page 32 in Leonard's book. So here we got the C-119 flying boxcar. We'll go to the next slide. This was not a large craft. This craft was 9 feet in diameter. Now, how do we know that? It's simple. It's a mathematical certainty. Because if you take a tape measure and you measure the interior walls of a C-119 flying boxcar, you're going to get 9 feet, 10 inches wide. So by default, you have to allow 5 inches of clearance on either side so that this thing can fit in. So it cannot be any bigger than 9 feet. Totally makes sense. So let's go to the next slide. Here you see the clamshell bay doors open on the C-119, and they're with this inclined plane kind of pulling this thing into the back of the C-119. Now, we're going to use this as a guide. We'll move on to the full color rendering by Joseph Wraith, and now we can kind of see what this scene looks like. I'm going to zoom in to the right of this illustration so that we can get a better view of what this craft looks like as they're kind of bringing this thing. So this is another one of these military witnesses. Now, the source said that there were 3 ET bodies recovered from this. They were very small. They have to be small to fit into this thing. And they were burnt very badly. Let's go to the next slide here. This was not for the faint of heart. So when the witness knelt down to one of these bodies, he put his hand on their forehead, and when he lifted his hand up, the skin came off on his fingers. So this was kind of a gruesome sight, but this is what is reported within the Stringfield publication here. Let's continue on. Naval Air Station, Sunnyvale, California, Hangar 1 back in 1950. Our witness is a radar operator. This is case B5, page 57 in Leonard's publication for anyone who wants to follow along on this. Now, a couple of quick points on this hangar. It still exists today. Billy, this hangar is so large, absolutely so cavernous inside, it actually has its own weather. During World War II, this was used to house blimps. That's how you could put multiple blimps in this thing. That's how big this thing is. Now, our witness, who was a radar operator, he kind of went through these double doors, and when he went inside, what did he see? He saw about a 100-foot diameter dish-shaped craft kind of sitting on the hangar floor. It had a dome on top. It had windows wrapped around the outer circumference. He was there for less than a minute. He was challenged by a guard telling him to get out of here immediately, so he left. Later, he told his mother the following, quote, "It was certainly no aircraft of ours." That was his assessment. This is back in 1950. So let's go to the full color rendering here. And this is what our radar operator, something similar to this, was seen by our radar operator back in 1950. Now, Albuquerque Journal, March 18th, 1950. Hundreds at Farmington report large force of flying saucers. We're talking about the Farmington Armada, which is famous within this field. Now, we're going to go to the next slide here. This is Cincinnati Enquirer, July 29th, 1952. Shoot saucers down. Jet pilots so ordered in 24-hour air alert. I'm sure you're familiar with this, Billy, is that in the early 1950s, there was a standing order by the United States Air Force to our pilots to shoot these things down. Shoot these things down, like at any cost. So let's go hit some of the newspaper clippings. Jets keeping 24-hour alert for saucers. Pilots ordered to down objects if they don't land. On the saucer trail, pilots told shoot them down. Jets on 24-hour alert to shoot down saucers. So there's this standing order here. Now, what type of aircraft did they use? They used F-94 Starfires. trying to intercept these disc-shaped craft. We'll go to the next slide here, shows you the two locations within the United States where you can actually view these aircraft up close and personal. One is in Tucson, Arizona, at the Pima Air and Space Museum. Now that has the rocket flaps in the closed position. If you go to Dayton, Ohio, Air Force Museum, you can see the same model with the rocket flaps in the open position. This is where they were shooting these rockets out. So we'll go to Rudy's drawing at one of these intercepts, and this is what was going on. Now, what's interesting is, while all these intercepts are going on with the F-94s, Billy, they had the gun cameras rolling, and they got documented footage of all this.
Wow.
We're talking thousands of reels here. Where is that evidence? Why is that not being brought into congressional hearings?
Yeah.
They have multiple warehouses where they keep all this. They got the gun camera footage. They've got the still photography. They got 8x10 black and white glossy photographs. They've got 8x10 color photographs of these intercepts. This is absolutely the evidence we need. Here's my full color rendering just to give an idea what these intercepts may actually look like. Now, this was so prevalent, Billy, that there was an order after they tried to shoot these things down. The Air Force rescinded their order because they were losing craft and pilots at an alarming rate. This is what the Air Force doesn't want to talk about. They lost a whole bunch of craft and pilots, so much so that our good friend Frank Pacino, want to give him credit, shoot them down, the Flying Saucer Air Wars of 1952. A lot of the families were not told the whole story. There was a lot going on, but the bottom line is we did lose a lot of craft and pilots. This book goes into all the reference detailed, documented, excruciatingly well done Air Force records and reports. Let's go to the next one. Now, I want to move on to this slide, which I think is very important. This was a letter written to Leonard Stringfield by a very fine woman named Mildred Bissell back on October 2nd, 1979. We're going to go through this really quickly here. Here's what she says. I heard you speak at the MUFON Symposium in Dayton last year, and I am interested in your research on retrievals of the third kind. I gave a talk at a local library last week, and in the discussion period following, a fellow told me that when he was a gunner in the Air Force, he had emptied his guns on a UFO and had taken pictures with his gun camera that clearly showed the shells exploding against the side of the craft. He said the camera was taken off the wing of his plane when it landed, and the pictures developed. At 2 a.m., a couple of military policemen came and got him out of bed and took him to the base auditorium. They ran the 17 seconds of movie of the UFO over and over and questioned him and two other crew members until 10 a.m. He was warned never to tell anyone what had happened. He said he had a wife and a family, a good job, and a lot to lose. He seemed afraid of the CIA and wouldn't even give me his name. So here we've got this account from this pilot. Now they emptied an entire magazines of shells at this thing, hit the side of the craft, no effect whatsoever, and they got it all on gun cameras. I mean, how many times did this happen during the early 1950s? And we don't have any footage.
No footage. I mean, we only have one great photo from the Battle of Los Angeles where something similar happened.
That's right. That's right. Let's continue here. Classified materials library at an unknown U.S. Air Force base. This is a former military officer. Page 212, page 213 within the book. Now, this military officer, he had the correct security clearance to access these file cabinets. So he pulled open one of these drawers, pulled out a manila folder. It was marked crash retrieval. Within this folder, there was a detailed report that talked about multiple crashes and bodies. So there was a report. And then there was an 8x10 black and white photograph showing this craft. So let's go on to the next slide here. And this is what it actually showed. There was about approximately 36-foot diameter dish-shaped craft in a southwest location, had a low-rise dome. It said that there was a series of porthole windows wrapped around the outer circumference of the upper dome. And then the report said that there was a pencil-sized hole in one of these domes. Now I'm going to go to the full color rendering just to kind of make this come alive a little bit. Now we'd love to get access to this file cabinet.
Yeah.
Here are the key takeaways here. Number one, military officer had the correct security clearance, which gave him access to a classified materials library. Report seen by witness made reference to crashes and that bodies were recovered. In addition, diamond tip drill bits and acetylene torches were used to gain access to the interior. And then point number four, eventually technicians were able to gain access to the interior of the craft by way of a small entry hatch. The report said, referring to the door, that it was almost as if the material of the craft liquefied and solidified again. So here, Burley, we've got these accounts of the seams on the entryway hatches of these vehicles are so fully integrated into the skins as of to become completely indistinguishable, like it's liquid metal. You can't put a razor blade in these seams. That's what these military witnesses are telling us here. Now, let's go on to the Pentagon. This is 1952 at an off-limits room. Our source is a Pentagon office worker, page 152, case A1. Now, our Pentagon officer worker, she goes down to what we believe to be the basement at the Pentagon. So when she gets there, she kind of goes through this door, and now she's in this dark, dimly lit room. There's some cardboard boxes off to the right. She kind of does a 180-degree turn, Billy, and what does she see? She sees a pickle alien in a large glass jar, and she can't believe what she's seeing. Within a matter of 10 seconds, she feels this hand on her arm. It was a military police telling her to get out of here immediately. Now, I wanted to see if I could do a little bit of a color illustration on that, and this is what I came up with. But this is what this office worker is telling us that she actually saw. Now, I wanted to see if I could verify any of this story. Is there a basement at the Pentagon? We've heard these accounts, so I started digging. And that leads us to our good friend Dick Cheney, okay? This is Peninsula Times Tribune, March 25th, 1989. New defense chief gets lost in the Pentagon basement. So here we have Dick Cheney on the upper levels of the Pentagon. He just finished his meeting. He goes in an elevator. He drops down to what he thought was the carport. Elevator doors he walks out, and he gets lost in the Pentagon basement. So yes, it checks out. There is a basement at the Pentagon. So in point of fact, yes, there could have been a facility there where this alien in a pickled glass jar could have actually been. Let's go on to the next one. Dutton, Montana, 1953. This is Cecil Tenney. He's a civilian. Page 16, abstract 11 in the book. So here we have the witness. He's driving down this road, and he looks up. He sees a large 120-foot long cigar-shaped craft tip up at a 45-degree angle. On the bottom of it, Billy, it was belching out balls of smoke and flames, and it was trying to keep itself up. He said it was struggling to keep itself airborne. So the oncoming traffic, he stated, had their tailpipes caught on fire. So he goes another half mile down the road. There was a bar there. He actually filed a report with the bar owner, and as soon as he walked into the bar owner said, "You smell like lightning." I thought that was interesting. So he files the report. He drives home. 5 minutes later, there's a police officer that shows up. He files almost an identical report. The bar owner tells him, "Hey, a guy just came in here 5 minutes before you, and he filed almost the identical report." Later that night, word got back to the base commander. He calls up our primary eyewitness and said, "I want to see you." So he shows up the next morning, and you can see Rudy's drawing here. He's grilled by the base commander. He's told to sign non-disclosure agreements. And then when he's walking out the facility, he's escorted. There were what looked like two military police were having these potato sacks over their backs. One guy trips, he falls down to the ground. And our primary eyewitness said that it looked like there were human body parts inside. He could not confirm it completely, but that was his assessment. Something like this was seen by the primary eyewitness. Now, why is this important? Because Great Falls Air Force Base, where all this went down, was later renamed Malmstrom Air Force Base. And Billy, you're very familiar with this case. This is the 1967 case, and we'll go to the next slide here. Here we have Great Falls Tribune, September 28th, 2010. no less than 10 nuclear ICBM missile silo launch complex facilities. They went offline. We had at least 10 of these ICBMs go offline. And we'll go to the next slide here. This is Rudy's drawing, just to give people an idea of what may have been seen at the upper level of these missile silos. Now, this isn't the only time one of these large cigar-shaped craft have been actually seen. This is December 7th, 1954 in Argentina. Almost the same identical configuration with the smoke coming out of the back. So it's not a completely isolated incident. This is our first pass illustration to give an idea of what this actually looks like. I think we got time for one more here. This is Fort Polk, Louisiana, summer 1953. HJ is a private in the Army. This is case A1, page 80 in the book. Now, he was at the retrieval from the very beginning. Now, when this thing came down, he said that the soil where it came down was still warm and hot to the touch. This is about a 30-foot long egg-shaped craft. Now, he also stated that there was a ring wrapped around this craft that was still rotating. And then he said that there was actually medical personnel assisting the ETs coming out of the entryway hatch. Wow. One ET was being carried off in a stretcher. Now, these ETs, according to the report, were about 3.5 to 4 feet tall. They had oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose. They were wearing a one-piece tight-fitting green flight suit with mittens on and helmets. Now, here's where it gets interesting. One was being carried off into the ambulance truck. Here you see Rudy's drawing. But the 3 that were being assisted by the medical personnel, they did not, Billy, have a knee joint. They could only move with their hip joint. So there was this very strange stagger maneuver when they were walking. Now let's go to the full color rendering here. This gives you an idea of what this looked like. This is Joseph Rake. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit and we'll get a little bit of a closer look. This is what the witness described with these 3.5 to 4 foot tall beings, all wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. We'll go to the next slide here. This shows you the comrade being loaded into the ambulance truck, and we'll do a blow up here to get a little bit closer. And this is what our military witnesses are actually telling us here. So in this presentation, Billy, first of all, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to join you here. What I try to do is we want to take the actual firsthand military witnesses. We're going to commit their testimony to refined drawings. We'll kind of finish up with our full color renderings to preserve an important part of our national history here. And Billy, I want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to join you here.
Listen, man, this has just been beautiful. I mean, really, there's a preponderance of evidence, and, in America, you can actually be convicted of a crime if you have enough circumstantial evidence against you. Well, you've compiled enough circumstantial evidence to make a case about retrieved UFO vehicles and the fact that they have them and even the bodies.
Correct.
So, amazing. Yeah.
And it's the caliber of the witnesses that counts the most. These are what the military sources are telling us. The doctors, the pathologists, X-ray technicians, people who worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base that accepted and actually took the debris and hardware and craft into Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, we just can't discount all of these witnesses. We only need one. So it really is, the odds are in our favor. These are the type of witnesses that we need to track down before it's too late. It is absolutely the final curtain call on crash retrievals. And I hope that we can come together as a united coalition of researchers to track down these legacy witnesses. This is our history. This is our one chance to preserve this history. And it really is up to us.
Absolutely, man. You've done an amazing job at this. I'm looking forward to putting this out and watching it again because these illustrations are astounding. And we want to thank you so much, man, for taking the time to come on here out of your busy schedule. We got to have you back on soon.
No problem. We'll do a part 2. No problem.
All right. Beautiful, man. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thanks. Yep.
All right, man. Watch this video for free at www.4bk.tv or download the app on your smartphone, Fire Stick app, Samsung TV, Roku, and other app providers.